You're listening to Invited In with Christine Boyle, where disability and faith meet. Here's your host, Christine Boyle. You are invited in.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Disability and Faith. I'm so excited to be back with you. So I have not been doing my podcast every 2 weeks as planned. I don't know how to make that better, but we're here, we're together, and it's exciting, right? I am sitting in studio court. I would just encourage you, if you only listen to the audio part of my podcast, jump on to YouTube, even if it's for 10 seconds, and I want you to see my new background in studio court. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Festival of the Arts at Epcot at Disney World, but I love it there. And there's been a couple times that I've gone and I've bought some artwork, and I finally just got it custom framed at Hobby Lobby and got it put up in studio court. And all these things all are important because this was Courtney's bedroom that I turned into my studio after she passed away. And so I always try to pick things that she loved that make me think of her. And the most important part, if you haven't noticed what the little plaque behind me says, this is the most important part. Proverbs 31:25. If there is any scripture that describes Courtney Alexis Boyle, it is this scripture. She is clothed in strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future. That was my girl. 100% lived life fearless, even in the most challenging times. So I love my studio. And so if you're only listening to the audio version of this, you are missing out on seeing this beautiful studio. But please, check it out because I don't know, it cost me like $300, $350 to frame all these pictures. So I was a little shocked at how much custom framing costs, but needless to say, it needed to get done. And I'm so pumped that it's up and it looks gorgeous. And I feel like that wall is now more full and it honors my sweet girl. So yeah, but hey, I hope you guys are well. I'm sitting here drinking out of a Hello Kitty Christmas mug, even though it's February. I hope you don't mind, but I love Hello Kitty and I wanted a cup of coffee. I'm not normally a coffee drinker in the middle of the day, but I wanted a cup of coffee. So, all right. Here we go. Well, hey, I am so excited to be back with you guys. I want to just drop a couple quick things. Since this is a disability and faith podcast, I would be ridiculous to not tell you and remind you that Disability in the Church conference that is put on by Key Ministry is happening again this April in Washington, D.C. at McLean Bible Church. I'm going to be doing 2 breakout sessions. So super pumped about that. If you want to come to Disability and the Church conference, well, let me just say this. You need to come. If disability is part of your life and you are a follower of Jesus, or you work in disability ministry, or you want to get something started that relates to disability and faith, this is the conference to go to, period. Okay. It's the largest faith-based disability conference in the country. Last year, I think they had like 800 attendees. This year, it's probably going to be more. It's a great location, Washington, D.C. I loved it way better when it was in Orlando, just saying, but Washington, D.C. is an awesome, easy location to get to from any city. So that's a perk. But this is the conference to go to. Between networking and just building relationships, that is such a key in running disability ministry. It's building those relationships, networking, learning from other ministries, learning from other organizations, but then also having a community around you so that you feel like, who can I go to when this is hard? Who can I go to when that was just not a win and that was a horrible experience? You need people to surround you that are going to cheer you on and relate to you and keep you encouraged. So can't speak highly enough of that. You can go to keyministry.org. I think they also have disabilityinthechurch.com you can go to. So you could also just Google it, Disability in the Church. It's again in Washington, D.C. Come there. I'll be there. I'm excited. Can't wait to see so many friends. It's going to be awesome. So come join me. They're actually even doing, you can apply to get a free ticket if you're a lead pastor. We know that churches that have disability ministries, it starts with leadership buying in, right? Buying into the fact that we need to be serving and loving and discipling our friends with disabilities. So it is so important that pastors are present, that they go to this conference. So anyways, all right, but reach out to me if you have any questions, need more info. I will be there. I'll have my own personal table for my podcast, for my speaking, and I will be selling my awesome disability t-shirts again, which I'm actually really excited. It has definitely been a year of growth with my t-shirts. Like last year, I did it just for that conference and it was such a hit. And now I'm like way better at it, way better designs, and I'm super pumped. So I am going to actually add one more thing before I start. We're headed to Disney at the end of the month for the Disney Princess Half Marathon weekend. As many of you know, this is something that 10 years ago, this is the 10-year anniversary. Dan Boyle, Courtney Boyle, got Disney to change their no mobility aid policy. So what does that mean? 10 years ago, when Dan Boyle was determined to push his princess in the Disney Princess Half Marathon weekend, he learned that they did not allow people to be pushed in their races. And he could not and would not take no for an answer. Disney had turned down so many people, so many organizations. Dan Boyle said no, and he pushed and he fought. He got the U.S. Track and Field Federation involved, and Disney, Walt Disney World changed, and Disneyland changed their no mobility aid policy. And now push duos can be part of their races. So for 10 years now, people like Courtney and Kevin have been able to participate and be pushed in the races. And that was such a huge accomplishment. There's so many people that now participate. It's so exciting. Props to Dan for not giving up, for being an awesome disability dad, not taking no for an answer, and getting this policy changed. Their story made it all over national news, and it was awesome. We had a huge organization called Ainsley's Angels at the time that had heard the story and heard that the policy changed. They're an organization that is only push duos, people who volunteer and push people with disabilities in races. And as we knew, and as they knew, there are so many big races you could be a part of, right? Like Boston and Cleveland, and I think LA and all these big cities, right? Wasn't an issue. But for some reason, Disney, Walt Disney World made it an issue. And so Ainsley's Angels of America reached out to Dan and said, "You're our hero. You got this changed." They donated a running chair to Courtney. And when it made it all the way to national news, all over the national news, their story of being trailblazers and getting this changed, there was so much hype that we were like, okay, let's raise some money for something good. And so we ran for Rena, a young lady in El Salvador that I met on my very first trip in 2005 that we have been caring for the last 20 years, you guys. We raised, in a matter of about 24, 36 hours, something crazy like that, we raised $12,000 for Rena. And so I just want to say to you, if you want to give as a way to just continue the mission, because we ended up starting a nonprofit after that. We started the Team Boyle Foundation, and we said, hey, look at the good we can do. Dan and Court can run. They're an inspiration to people. They've broken down barriers, but that doesn't have to be the end of their story. They can get people excited and inspired, and people can give money, and we could do things to support causes in the disability community. And so Dan and Courtney raised so much money for so many different causes. Rena for Challenger Baseball. We years ago sent 10 kids to camp for free, to Young Life Camp. We paid their way to go to camp. I mean, so many different things we've been doing. And then we kind of hit a pause when Court passed away, and then Dan got injured. Now he pushes Kevin in the Princess Weekend. And so, we've still been doing all the things. We just haven't really had a fundraiser endeavor. But I would say, if you're like, man, I would love to make a donation, we still support Rena in El Salvador. We make sure that she has everything she needs, from diapers and food and nursing and respite care for her caregivers. I mean, we found a family along with our missionary friends in El Salvador to take her in and become her family. And they're caring for her and they're providing for her. And it's only with the help of us and other people here in Cleveland, Ohio, and beyond, that are giving money faithfully to care for Rena and make sure that her needs are always met. And so if you want to join us in that, we would love, love, love for you to do that. You can go to our Team Boyle website, which is on our invitedin.org website. You could click on the Team Boyle tab and you'll see specific ways to give to that part of the ministry, to the Team Boyle Foundation, to the mission of Rena and caring for her. It's such a beautiful way to say that her life matters, even though it feels like, oh, you're just helping one person. Her life has gone from darkness to light, and it has been such a privilege and an honor to care for her these last 20 years. And we will always care for her as long as she is alive. Here on this earth, we will care for her. She is like a daughter to us in so many ways. And we got to see her this past summer. It had been a really long time, and we're going to go back to El Salvador this summer and we'll get to see her again. And so this is a real living, breathing person that depends on Christians and caring people to make sure that every need of hers is met. So I want to invite you to give generously to the care and support of Rena. So thank you for even considering it. And if you want to talk more about that, reach out to me. Happy to have a conversation with you. So anyways, we're headed to Disney for that race at the end of the month. Super excited. I'm going to be walking the 10K. I run for the pictures. When I see the photo pass person, I start acting like I'm running. So I look like I'm running in pictures. So if you see me post on Instagram or Facebook pictures where I look like I'm running, I'm not really running. It's just for the pictures. But I'll have my little Courtney heads on a stick and we'll be cheering and honoring our sweet girl. And actually, crazy thing, you guys, it's never this late in February, but the half marathon that Dan and Kev will be participating in, so they do the 10K and the half, I just do the 10K, is actually on March 1st, which is the 4-year anniversary of her passing. So if you think of it, pray for us. It's already an emotional event for our family, but it's going to be an exceptionally emotional time for our family, just honoring her, celebrating her, grieving, being in the happiest place on earth, doing the things she loved to do, but missing her terribly. But we're excited. We're excited and can't wait. So anyways, again, long intro, but thanks for listening. So glad to be back with you guys. So glad. We also have Night to Shine prom tomorrow. So I don't know if this is going to get put out before or after that, but excited about Night to Shine. I've been on a mission of just trying to really just make it clear to the church that people with disabilities need more than just one night proms. And if you listen to my last podcast, that's what it was all about, was just, we need so much more than a night. We need belonging, care, community, all of that all year long. Our friends need discipleship. So I'm just really praying for churches to rise up, to understand that this was never intended to be a one-night event. I'm hopeful though. I'm hopeful. And I'm really excited to hang out with all our friends that we do ministry with. Guys, these young adults, and some of them are older. My friend Steven that comes, he's older than me. So I'm not young. He's not young. These adults that we get to just do ministry with, that we get to just spend time with, like, I don't know. My life just wouldn't be complete without them. That's probably the best way to say it. These are some of my most favorite friends. It's such a joy. It's such a gift. And I love just watching them like grow in their faith. I see the change. I see our friends just understanding Jesus more. And it's such a gift to see the fruit of years and years of working toward this. It's just amazing. And it's such a gift. And I have the best job in the world. And I have some of the sweetest, most amazing friends in the world. There's really not a day that goes by that I'm not in awe of like what God has called me to do and the life he's building and giving me in this disability ministry space. So I'm just thankful. Just wanted you guys to know that I'm thankful. So last week we had one of our invited in church network luncheons, and our keynote speaker was Dr. Steve Gersevich. He is the founder and president of Key Ministry, who puts on the Disability in the Church conference I just talked about. And Steve's expertise, because he's a retired child and adolescent psychiatrist, his expertise is mental health in the church. And so every time we have one of our church network luncheons, we have a different speaker, different topic. And so Steve came to talk about mental health in the church. And it was a really great, it's great because when you think of it, people think of disability ministry, they strictly are thinking of kids and young adults with disabilities, like intellectual and developmental disabilities. And mental health is across the board. And we know that statistically. So, as we were talking to these churches, it was like, this is in your children's ministry. This is in your teen ministry. This is in your women's ministry, your men's. Every ministry has people with mental health challenges a part of it. And so this is bigger than just disability ministry as you would think of it, right? So it's a really relevant topic for any pastor, any church. And so I loved what Steve shared. And after he shared, I got up and I talked for about 10 minutes about being a daughter and a caregiver and a legal guardian to my dad, who I've shared with you guys has schizophrenia. And so I've never done that before. The most I've really shared publicly has been on my podcast, where I've just referenced that or said, that this is the situation. So this was my first time standing up on a stage and sharing my story about caring for my dad and my story of my childhood. And it was hard. But it also was good. And so I decided I wanted to do this podcast and tell the same thing I shared at the church network luncheon. And there's a lot of reasons I want to share this. I actually had counseling yesterday. I do counseling twice a month. And, I was talking to my counselor about it because I was really trying to decide, like, should I share this? Shouldn't I? And I'm basically going at this with the perspective that this is my story and my intentions are for good. My intentions are to help destigmatize mental health challenges. I also, as you're going to hear in my story, you're going to hear me just bring a lot of humanity to my dad. And I'll just tell you my experience caregiving for him, whether it's in the medical community and just the way people treat him, they can be very dehumanizing. And so my heart and my hope is that if this isn't something you relate to personally, I hope that this just gives you a little window into mental health. And this is part of disability. And this is part of faith. And so I'm going to share probably a little bit more than what I shared at the church network, just because I was trying to keep it to like 10 minutes. I have notes, and I don't know if you guys know this. I don't typically use notes with any of my podcasts. The most I might do is put like 3 bullets, but I very rarely even do that. So I'm actually going to show you. I actually have notes. because I needed them when I was speaking at the church network. And it helped me. It helped me to really just make it concise, but still keep the emotion of it all. So anyways, thank you in advance for listening, for hearing, and letting me tell my story. It's going to feel heavy, and it is heavy. It's very heavy. But it's real. And I want people to understand what families in their churches, in their communities are walking through, most likely in silence. And so that's my goal. That's my goal in this. So here we go. I want to share a few minutes of my story as the daughter and longtime caregiver of someone with a severe and persistent mental health diagnosis. As I just said, this is heavy, but it's real. And my hope is that it helps you better understand what families in your churches and in your communities may be quietly carrying. My dad has lived with schizophrenia for almost 43 years. I'll be 44 in April, so this has been pretty much my entire life. I was about a year old when his symptoms began. At the time, we were living in New York. He worked in finance for IBM. He was working on his doctorate. He was married with 3 kids. I often tell people, if you've seen the movie A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe, that was my dad. That is my dad. A walking calculator, absolutely brilliant. And if you met him today, you'd likely have no idea that he lives with schizophrenia. You would maybe think he's maybe a little socially awkward or just something maybe a little different. But to be honest with you, some of that is more a direct cause of 43 years of psych meds versus the actual schizophrenia itself. We believe the triggering of his schizophrenia came when his mom became ill and began dying in Cleveland while we were in New York. That's when everything changed. The man my mom loved became paranoid, fearful, and eventually violent, something he had never been before. He hurt my mom and he hurt my brother. His employer required him to see a psychiatrist. And honestly, that intervention is likely the reason he got diagnosed so quickly. He eventually lost his job and we moved back to Cleveland. My parents separated and later divorced when I was 8. Growing up, I didn't know the word schizophrenia. I was told my dad was sick. I was taught to say that he retired early if someone asked what he did for a job. I was never, ever to say he had a mental illness. I learned at a very young age that this was something to hide, something shameful. Even so, my dad was my safe place. He drove me to school every day till I was 16. And he drove my friends. He drove all of us everywhere. In 2nd grade, I would pretend I was sick and lie and say I was sick just so he'd pick me up from school. My mom was a single mom and worked full time. And so if I went home sick from school, my dad would pick me up and I'd get to go to his house. He was the best dad to me. He played with me constantly, read to me. He let me put price tags. I loved playing store. And he let me put price tags on everything in his house. And we'd play store and I'd, ring up everything, all these different items in his house. He spoiled me terribly. FYI, if you don't know this, schizophrenics are terrible with money. I had every babysitter club book. I remember at one point in my life, I had over 40 Barbies. Truly anything I wanted, I got. He truly spoiled me. Probably rotten, but he spoiled me. He showed up at every basketball and football game that I cheerleaded at, every event. He was my biggest fan. There were times when he would refuse to get his monthly psychiatric injection. And as a child, I learned how to handle it. Dad, I can't come over if you don't get your shot. And he always eventually gave in. I didn't realize until my adulthood, honestly, probably about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, how unhealthy and how heavy that responsibility was for a child to carry and how it was trauma. I got pregnant right after high school, and I'm sure there's a very deep connection to many areas of my life, but definitely probably a connection to the fact that my dad was schizophrenic. But got pregnant right after high school, and my mom had kicked me out of the house. And guess who took me in? Of course, my dad. No questions asked. When my daughter Courtney was born with severe disabilities, my dad sat sorry. When my daughter Courtney was born with severe disabilities, my dad sat in the hospital with me every day for a month and a half. When Courtney came home from the hospital, and I had, just to make this make sense, I had moved out of his house and was living on my own in an apartment. So when Courtney came home from the hospital, he'd sleep over my apartment to do her overnight tube feeds for me. She had like 4 a.m. tube feeds. He became the most devoted grandpa. A friend of mine once described him as my golden retriever. Faithful, loyal, always there. That was him. At 18, right after Courtney was born, for some crazy reason, I made the deliberate decision to become his primary caregiver. Since 2000, the year 2000, I've attended every appointment with him. I remember being at the first psychiatry appointment I went with him. And I remember as a kid, like sometimes I would go with him to his appointments, but this was different. This was like, I'm taking over. I'm going to be with him and be a support to him now. And so I remember asking that psychiatrist what his diagnosis actually was. So I was 18, and I didn't understand. That's when I fully understood schizophrenia. But 18 years of not knowing exactly what my dad's diagnosis was. In 2007, his condition worsened significantly, multiple hospitalizations, and it became clear I needed to pursue legal guardianship. When I was granted being his legal guardian by probate court, there was both relief because I would now have legal control, and then there was also deep grief. My dad was declared incompetent by probate court. I now had full legal authority over his life, like a parent of a minor has. I had full authority to make any and every decision for him. Shortly after, I made the decision to move him into a group home. This came after Dan and I had tried to have him live with us for a little bit, and that did not work out. And it actually just wouldn't have been healthy for him or for us. And then he moved into an apartment, and that's when he really had a lot of challenges. So I had to make the hard decision to move him into a group home. I was criticized by family members who have never helped. Was told I was a horrible daughter by his sister. But by that point, I'd already been a disability mom for 7 years. I had learned to trust my decisions and ignore the voices that showed up with opinions but not support. It's, gosh, one thing I've learned is it is so easy for people to be critical of your decisions. And I think one of the most freeing things God has given me is I have just learned, like, unless you've done this, whether it's like disability parenting, being a medical mom, or whether it's, this situation with my dad, unless you've done this and you've lived it, like you have no clue. And I'm not saying that in a jerky way, like, oh, you don't get it, but it's amazing how critical people can be when they don't help, they haven't helped, they don't offer help, they don't care. I don't want to say they don't care, but they don't help, or they've never ever done what you've done. And so, like, if you're listening to this and this resonates with you, I just want to encourage you, like, challenge yourself to just really think that through and think through why you're giving people who have sat on the sidelines or have never been a disability parent, never been a medical parent, like why you're giving them a voice in your life and in your caregiving. We have to be so protective of that, so protective. And so for me, is it hard to hear to hear his sister say, I'm a horrible daughter for putting him in a group home? Sure. Yeah, it was very hard, but I also knew my heart. I knew my intentions. God knows my heart. God knows my intentions are for good. And I also just had to stop and go, okay, well, do you want to do something? Do you want to help? Do you want to take him in? Like, and the truth is she didn't. And so how much could I let her voice and her opinions matter to me, right? I couldn't. So really it was because, again, I'd already been a disability mom for 7 years at that point. I learned to trust my decisions and ignore voices that showed up with opinions but not support. For over 12 years, he lived in 2 different group homes. No Medicaid, no food stamps, no case management, because he made too much on Social Security disability. Social Security disability, FYI, is based on what you earned when you worked. And so it's very different than like someone like Kevin, someone like Courtney, who when they turned 18 and our income no longer counted, SSI goes simply by their income. And so my dad made too much money from Social Security disability to get really any support or any assistance. So he paid most of that toward his rent in the group home. The system made no sense and still is incredibly broken. In 2020, I made another terrifying decision to move him into his own apartment. There was so much abuse happening in these 2 group homes, and the living situation became so toxic that I decided I could bring the services he was getting there, I could bring those services to him in an apartment, and it would probably be better, it would be cheaper, and it would give him a chance at living on his own. And instead of failing, he flourished. He made friends, he became safer, his life became more dignified, and he is living to this day in the least restrictive environment. There are few resources for people like my dad, those who once worked, once earned a really good living, and once had a life that disappeared overnight. This is what schizophrenia can look like. Some days he believes he's a millionaire. Other times he thought Hulk Hogan wanted to kill him and climbed out of windows to hide. Once he believed he was supposed to take a charter plane and ended up arrested at the airport. This was a season where I never knew who was going to call me and where I'd get the phone call from or where they had found him. He's believed he owns the Browns, that the mafia is after him. And then there's the quieter things. He's a terrible sleeper. We just took him to Disney World with us in November. And I mean, yeah, it's just terrible sleeper. OCD behaviors. He's destroyed his teeth from compulsive brushing. So he wants to brush his teeth like 10 times a day. And he's no longer able to drive because of medication. When I became his guardian, he had $60,000 in credit card debt, and it was on me to call his creditors or respond to creditors. And I basically just had to say, hey, you gave a schizophrenic person, $40,000 in a credit line. He had no job. Sorry, sue him. He has nothing. And that's what I've had to do with all these creditors. Normally, in normal situations, I obviously believe with all my heart that if you're in credit card debt, you pay it back and that's your responsibility. But in this case, it was, he's got nothing. He has zero assets and you never should have given him this. So sorry, not sorry. Some days he treats me like his enemy. Other days he tells me he couldn't survive without me. There is a unique pain in hearing cruel words from a parent and having to remind yourself they don't truly mean them. I've parented 2 children with extreme medical complexities. And I always say this carefully, but honestly. Schizophrenia is harder. Schizophrenia is in a league of its own. About a year and a half ago, a local church here in Cleveland, a Catholic church, St. Ambrose, had posted on social media, and I just happened to see it, that they were doing a day retreat for caregivers of people with mental illness. They had partnered with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And in over 4 decades of this journey, I had never been to anything like this. I had never been to anything that supports me as a caregiver. And so it was really beautiful to see this church hosting something like that and teaming up with an organization like NAMI to just provide some support to caregivers. It was the first time I could release the grief, the exhaustion, and the loneliness among people who actually understood. He finally, for the first time, has a psychiatrist who treats him with dignity and focuses on his quality of life. She treats him like a human being, and she supports me and encourages me and educates me. She's the best psychiatrist my dad has ever had. And not because she's clinically perfect or because she, has a different pharmacological approach. It's because she has a brother with schizophrenia. And so she gets it. She gets it. Caregivers are often unsupported, often isolated. And the unsupported and isolated stems from shame, the stigma, and the trauma that keeps these hidden disabilities hidden even more. Thank you for letting me share that. There's so many more details, so many more. but I wanted to just bring to light how challenging it is, how beautiful it is, though. My dad was so close with Courtney. They had such a beautiful, beautiful relationship. And he really was so pivotal in that. Dan and I started dating when she was 13 months old. So really, like, that first 13 months of her life, like, I couldn't have done it without him. And so that's the part I want you guys to hear. Just like, here he has this really significant diagnosis, and yet he's still a good dad, and he's still a good grandpa. And I see the way the world can treat him. I see the way his family has treated him. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And it's because it's hard. It's because it tests your patience. I mean, him and I, like, we'll go at it sometimes. I'm not going to lie. Like, but we always come back to, like, he needs me, I need him, right? But it's very hard. And you watch people walk away more than they stay. And I think one of the things I learned was that, like, and I didn't hide this. I guess I would like just to back up a little. So for me, I really didn't talk about this because that's how I was conditioned as a kid. And then as a teenager, I really didn't talk about it. I think one of my boyfriends in high school who I dated a pretty long time, like, he knew. And then when Dan and I dated, he knew. But I started to get really a lot more comfortable sharing. And that's really hard. It's like you're breaking the mold. You're breaking everything you've been conditioned to believe. And so, I mean, honestly, that's why yesterday when I had counseling, like, I had to sit with my counselor virtually and just say, like, I don't want this to feel wrong sharing. And she just really helped me understand, like, it's the stigma. It's what you have had ingrained in you. And she's right. She's right. And so for me, it's like, as I've become an adult, like, I've shared with people more and more about his diagnosis, because what I've learned is this is part of me. This has been my whole life. Like, someone who doesn't know that my dad has schizophrenia and that I'm a caregiver for him isn't going to understand me, isn't going to understand who I am, why I am the way I am, what my responsibilities are on a normal day, like, what stressors I have, what joys I have, all of that. Like, nobody's going to understand that. So because this is so much a part of me, this has been my whole life, basically. And so I've just learned I have to be okay sharing this more freely. And I'm just adding to the stigma of mental health diagnoses if I act like this isn't true or act like it's wrong to talk about this. It's not. It's not. And I mean, this is the reality. And this has shaped every part of my life. I mean, if my dad wasn't schizophrenic, my parents would probably still be married. You know, I mean, there's a lot here. And I also share because what I realize is I started doing counseling when Courtney died. And basically my counseling has evolved into not really grief counseling, but just counseling over my life and so much craziness in my life. And what I've just realized is we needed so much care. so much support, so much counsel. And I can't say this with 100% certainty, but I would say it with probably 95% certainty. This was very, very, very much hidden from our church family, friends. I mean, and that is no way to live life. It actually makes me really sad that this is the first time in my life, not that my counseling is about my dad and schizophrenia, it's not, but like it is at times, it's very much at times, right? And so it just makes me sad to realize like, gosh, I needed this my whole life. I needed this kind of support and this kind of help, and I didn't get it. And my mom probably felt like she couldn't give it because she was hiding this, you know? And so that's the hard part about these diagnoses, is that why do we feel like there's shame in it? Why do we feel like this is any different than any other diagnosis? Like, I talk freely about Kevin and his disabilities. I've talked freely about Courtney and her disabilities and her diagnoses. And it's like, why do we treat this any different? And that's why it feels so like, oh, should I be saying this? But, you know, again, I really have looked at this like this is really my story I'm sharing. I think the beautiful part is my dad is such a good man. He didn't ask for this. Somehow in God's sovereignty, this is what the Lord has allowed. But he is a good man, and he has been a wonderful father. He has limited capacity because of his disability, but even so, his capacity exceeds probably many fathers, of many normal fathers, right? If I had to describe my dad, I would say he would do anything for his kids, his grandkids, anything. And you can't always say that about your parents. Can't always say that about a person. He would, and he has. And I'm so proud of him. And I love just getting to share the journey that God has put him and I on together. Again, it's been so far from easy, but it's the journey that God has picked. And it's the reality of our world, is that there's suffering, there's mental health struggles, there's mental health diagnoses, right? There's illness, there's all these different things that are really hard. And your goal is I just want to make it better for him. And I feel like that's the call as Christians, is to just help to alleviate the suffering. It's not easy, but it's what I know God has called me to do. And I know if and when the roles were reversed, he took care of me, and he loved me so much and loves me so much and loved Courtney so much and loves Kevy so much. And I think it's so easy to lose sight of the humanity of people like him. I mean, I've seen it, I've watched it, like I said, with my own eyes. You know, times he's been in the emergency room. I mean, people just don't understand it. They don't understand schizophrenia. They don't understand he's still a grandpa. He's still a dad. I'll share this as I wrap up. Yesterday, when I was having counseling, one of the things that gave me the final thumbs up, I'm going to do this, was this. I got pretty emotional. I get pretty emotional about him. And I think it's just because I love him so much. And I know this has been a hard life for him. But I said to my counselor, I said, if I could have 10 minutes with every doctor who has treated him, again, whether that's a psychiatrist, whether that's just a medical doctor, like in the emergency room or something, or any person who's cared for him. Let me just say that, physician, nurse, whatever. If I could have just 10 minutes with them to tell them his story, to help them to just see who he is, who he was, like, I would love that. And that's what made me stop and go, I have to tell this. I have to share this. Because I realized sharing his story, sharing this story, sharing my story, it's not undignifying. It's the exact opposite. It's to help people understand, yes, he has schizophrenia, but he's still a dad. He's still a grandpa. He was a husband, right? He was an employee, all these things. Because people lose sight of that and they dehumanize people like him. And so that really helped me just stop and kind of assess my heart and like, why do I want to share this? Well, I want to share it to help people. Wednesday, when I shared it, it was specifically to help churches because truly families shouldn't be going through this alone. But the church leaders can only do so much if it's kept in silence and shame. And that's what I really want to change is that silence and that shame. You don't get help if you're living in silence. You don't live a free, abundant life if you're living tied down to shame. You don't get support if you're living in silence and shame. God is not a God of shame. I mean, Jesus was so clear. I did not come to condemn, but to save. He didn't come to condemn. He didn't come to shame us. He came to heal and restore. And so, that's what I care about is the people who are living in silence, because I know that was my story. That's how I was conditioned to be and to live. And it's so unhealthy. It's so unhealthy. And it's not okay, but it's so generational. It's a cycle that has to be broken, and it's scary. Just being honest, it's scary and it's hard to be a cycle breaker. It's scary and it's hard to break generational curses and generational cycles that have been so embedded in you, but it's necessary. It's necessary. So thank you for letting me share. I just want to encourage you that counseling is probably more achievable than you think. It's probably more affordable. And I will also challenge you, if you are a Christian and you are part of a local church, do not be afraid to go to your church and say that you need help with paying for counseling. Because I'll be honest, there's been plenty of Christian counselors I've gone to that don't take insurance. And so that becomes expensive to say, oh, I'm going to pay $100, $150 out of pocket, right? Like that is, in my opinion, so obviously part of the responsibility of the church to help carry that load with you, that financial load. And so I just want to encourage you, get the help. Like I could kick myself that I didn't do something like this much sooner because it's so helpful. It's just helpful. I don't know how else to say it. It's helpful. It's a lot. And sometimes we don't think it's a lot, but it is. And our lives are very different than the average normal person's life. And I know I'm one who minimizes that or has minimized that. I shouldn't be downplaying the significant challenges that I face in my life. I shouldn't be downplaying those. And I don't psychologically know why we do that, but do you know what I mean? Like the truth is we are living completely different lives as caregivers, whether it's disability, intellectual, developmental disability, mental health conditions, medically fragile kids, whatever it is. Like even like as I shared today about like that period of time where I never knew who was going to call me. I never knew what police station was going to call me. I'm going to be honest with you. There are people in your life that love you, that you love, that have no clue what it's like to live life on call 24/7. They have no clue. They have no clue. And this is almost humorous. It's so ridiculous, but it's such a good example. They have no clue what it's like as a disability mom to go to bed wearing your bra, having a bag packed next to your bed, because you just have a feeling you might be calling 911 at 2 a.m. and you want to make sure like you have a bra on when, EMS comes in to sweep your kid away and take him to the children's hospital. Like, let's be real. There are people, and this is no one's fault, but what I'm just trying to say is give yourself grace to admit that your life is not like everyone else's. The more you give yourself grace to admit that, the stronger you will be, the more patient with yourself you'll be. And by stronger, what do I mean? I mean, like in that case where I was telling you how my dad's sister was so critical of the fact that I was putting him in a group home. Do you know what I had to say? Like to myself, and I don't even remember what I said to her. I know I was feisty back at her, but do you know what I had to tell myself? She is not doing this. She has no freaking clue. And that may sound harsh as you're listening to this. And I don't really care if it does, because that is the truth. If you have no clue what it's like to wake up every day and care for someone and make decisions for someone with a persistent, severe mental health diagnosis, you don't get to say that I'm a terrible daughter for putting him in a group home and making that horrific decision to do so. And so it makes you stronger when you give yourself the grace and admit, I am making decisions that most people will never have to make. And I remember when I made that decision to move him out of his group home and into an apartment, I remember making that decision and going, this can blow up in my face and be the worst decision I've ever made. Because 8 years earlier was when he was climbing out of his apartment windows thinking Hulk Hogan was coming to kill him, right? Like it had blown up in my face before. And here I was going, I think he can do this. I think we can do this. And so it's like you are making these heavy decisions, and you have no idea sometimes if it's the right decision, if it's the wrong decision, if it's going to hurt the person you love, if it's going to benefit the person you love. And so it's just like you're just living in a space of so much heaviness. And that's why, honestly, the way I'm going to wrap this up is, how do you do this a minute without Jesus? How do you do this a minute without his strength, his purpose, the hope of knowing that someday he's going to make all things that are hard and sad untrue, that he is a God who redeems, he's a God who sees your every fear, your every tear, your every decision. How do you do this a minute without him? And without his love and grace and mercy carrying you? Jesus hasn't taken away my dad's schizophrenia, and most likely this side of heaven, my dad is going to die with schizophrenia. But Jesus has made sense of it. Jesus has shown me that he's still above this. He's still above it. And what the enemy wants to use for harm, he can use for good. And he gives me the strength. I'll be honest, and I'm not trying, please hear me when I say this, I'm not trying to put people down. I'm not. He gives a capacity that is beyond yourself. And I'm not saying this in a prideful way. Please, please, please hear that. But I want to be very transparent and honest in what I'm saying. There is a reason that there is one person who has been dedicated to my dad for all these years. And Dan too. I don't want to forget my sweet, loving husband who helps me so much. But Jesus has given me a capacity and a mandate on my life. He has compelled me. He has compelled me to do this. He has compelled me to give my dad the best life he can have. He deserves it. He has compelled me to do that for Kevin, for Courtney. And that is not a natural thing. I know it's not. I watched my daughter's birth father walk away. I've watched my dad's family walk away. It is not a natural thing. So don't think just because you're flesh and blood that compels you to caregive, to stick with it, to persevere. It doesn't. It's a higher calling. It's God's equipping. It's God's words. It's the Bible that tells you no, we're supposed to alleviate suffering. We are supposed to be Jesus's hands and feet, right? To this broken world, to people with disabilities. So Jesus gives capacity to do these things that are really, really hard. He gives hope. He gives hope that someday it'll be restored. What was broken will be restored. I'm so thankful for that. I hope that was helpful. I know it, like I said, it's heavy stuff, but it also just shows us how much people need help and support and care, and how caregivers do. And it's very, very heavy. I know I'm not the only one on this journey and walking through this. So I would definitely love to hear from you. I'd also just love to say to the church, I really hope if you're a pastor, a leader, and you're hearing this, that you'll just hear that we were a church family living in silence, living in shame, and going without the help we needed. And so one of the things Steve Gersovich shared at our church network luncheon was just how powerful it is for a pastor and church leadership to have these conversations about mental health, to preach on it, so that families can feel more like they can share. Or look at this St. Ambrose in Brunswick, Ohio, that partnered with NAMI. You don't even have to be a church that says we get it all. We're not experts in mental health. You don't even have to be that. But if you're just a church that says, we are going to just open our doors and we're going to partner with this secular organization that specializes in mental health, and we're going to do a day retreat. That in itself is a way for you to love and serve some really broken families, some families that are really struggling. So I just want to throw that out there as an idea, that there are ways for you to partner today that don't require your expertise, don't require you to have this education. I mean, and then I would just put out there Key Ministry as a resource. Key Ministry, Dr. Steve Gersovich. So again, that Key Ministry is also the organization that's putting on disability in the church. But if you reach out to them, they will help churches that want to be better at disability, better at mental health. And so I would just encourage you to keep them in mind as a disability resource, because one of the most important things you can do is be a church, be a community that comes around families like these. But we have to create environments that families feel like they can share, that they can be honest about what they're going through, so that they're not living in silence, so that they're not living in isolation. There's so many resources, there's so much support, and it's still freaking hard for even the disability family that's that's impacted by, sorry, I don't want to say dealing with, that sounds very negative, impacted by intellectual and developmental disabilities. There's many support groups, many things for families like that. We need more help for families that are impacted by mental health and are living in silence and shame. So just my 2 cents, but thanks again for listening. Again, if you want to reach out to me, you can message me through Instagram or Facebook, Christine Boyle on Facebook, Christine.A.Boyle on Instagram, or you can go on my website, christineboyle.com. You can message me through there, but I'd love to hear from you. I would absolutely love to hear how maybe this message impacted you, how it resonates with you. Would love to hear your story too. So God bless you guys. And hey, I will see you next time on Disability and Faith. Take care, guys. Friends, thank you so much for joining me today on Invited In. It's always such a gift to get to be with you. Don't forget to follow and subscribe, and visit christineboyle.com to have me speak at your next event. Take care, guys.